Hello, everyone, and welcome to the third installment of our ETH Alumni Knowledge Network Level Up series of events. What you're about to watch today is an AMA, an Ask Me Anything session that I just recorded with Philippe Kahn. Philippe Kahn is the founder and CEO of 4 very successful technology companies. He has issued over 230 patents in those different companies. He studied at ETH. Philippe is also famously the inventor of the camera phone, and he shared a little bit of the experience of how that creation came to be and the challenges he faced from the 5 years that he considered from the idea until it actually became a successful product. Philippe also told us about what he thinks is the future of AI, its positives and its downsides. We spoke about startups, and many other topics. And I hope you enjoy this AMA session with Philippe Kahn. Please go back to the ETH Alumni Knowledge Network, post your questions. The more questions you post, the richer the network becomes. And it also enables us to keep bringing you these great guests, such as Philippe Kahn today. So thank you very much and enjoy the session. Now, all right, so Philippe Kahn, welcome. Thank you very much for joining us today.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for being here. Let me start directly with the questions. So as a reminder, these questions are coming from the ETH alumni community. And the first one we have is directly related to ETH, which is, what is your fondest memory of ETH? And do you remember some of your favorite spots in Zurich that you like to hang out when you were studying there?
Well, the first thing I have to say that my fondest memory was to walk in and know that I was going to walk in the footsteps of Albert Einstein. So that was like, wow, that's the first wow thing. And then what I remember really fondly is the friendship, the camaraderie between the students and the faculty. And of course, for me, what was really important was to get to know Professor Nicholas Wirth. And from that, we ended up having a lifelong relationship. The places where I used to hang out at the time, and I think it's changed, I think a lot of us hung out at the Café Odeon by the lake, and I think that that was a place where we hung out for a long time and had extensive discussions. I think it's changed now. It's much more of I'm not sure. I haven't been there in a few years.
Got it. All right. That's a beautiful place. Zurich, in general, it's a beautiful place, I suppose. So for the next question, in an interview recently or a couple of years ago with the We Are ETH podcast, you mentioned sleep was your passion at the time. First, is that still the case? And second, there is a big push nowadays, especially on social media, towards what we call the hustle culture, which is sleep as little as possible, do as much work as you can. Is sleep still very important to you, and how do you feel about this mentality of pushing oneself to the limit to work as much as possible?
Yes, absolutely. Sleep is essential for me. I work very hard, but the more I sleep, the harder I work.
All right.
So I recommend people to focus on quality of sleep, and it'll help everything else. What I find is when you sleep, there's a lot of processes that happen. There are physical processes and there's mental processes. And it's your great garbage collector. Working and thinking without sleep is like programming without garbage collection. Ended up, at the end, everything ends up crashing. So that's part of the work we do on sleep, is focus on quality of sleep. It's not how long you sleep for, it's what's the quality of your sleep, which is a little different. And how long depends on different people. There's people who do well on 5 hours of sleep. There's people who need 8 hours of sleep. And that's something, and there's people who need to sleep in 2 shifts. Sleep is very personal. However, what's important is quality of sleep.
Absolutely, and that's the focus of your work now with Full Power AI. Is that correct?
That's a core focus, which is AI biosensing and applying that to help people live better lives.
Great stuff. Going a little bit into your career, so what inspired you to transition from academia to entrepreneurship? How did that shape your approach to building businesses, having come from a technical university?
Well, I started my PhD in math, and then it turns out that I was doing some work to make some money on some software, and I was working basically as a consultant or as a worker for an American software company, and they really liked my work. And one day they told me, you know, you'd be perfect for Silicon Valley, and I didn't know really what Silicon Valley was. But they convinced me that I should really live over there because people like me do well over there. And so at the end of the day, I said, you know what? Let's go for an adventure. And that was the adventure, and it worked out great. It was hard in the beginning, but it worked out great.
It seems to. Do you think you would have been able to do the same quality and the same amount of work that you've done in your life if you weren't in Silicon Valley?
I don't think so at the time. Maybe now it would be better. It's still not the same, but at the time there was not much going on in Europe when it came to high tech and startups and everything else. And that's really important. In Europe, you could become an engineer, usually in a large company, and build a career that way. But that's not what I wanted to do, or a career in academia. That was interesting to me. But you know, the lure of Silicon Valley was really intriguing to me pretty quickly.
Got it. What do you think is the biggest risk you've taken in your career, and how did that shape your journey? Was it the move to Silicon Valley?
That was a huge risk, but you know, I was younger, and when you're young, you don't think about these things; you just do it. Then you know, in general, the risk you take when you're an entrepreneur is that you have to put a lot on the line to be successful, and you can't just say, okay, I'm just doing this as a hobby. It becomes a passion, and then it goes beyond making money or being successful, beyond making it happen. And especially when you're an entrepreneur, a technology entrepreneur, you work with some very smart colleagues, and now you have a responsibility towards everybody to make it successful. And so that's a risk, and you always take that risk, and you never give up.
Got it. When you look back on your career, it's still very much ongoing career. What are you most proud of today, and has that changed from 30 years ago, for example? Was what you were most proud of 30 years ago different than what you are most proud of today?
30 years ago, you know, I was very happy with what I was starting to do when I was started on my PhD. And then at the beginning of, you know, I came into Silicon Valley as a consultant, pretty much. I didn't have a work permit or anything else. And when I started getting hired for jobs and different kind of jobs, I was very proud of that at the time, because that was really made a difference, and you know, suddenly I could make my living without being part of a large organization or academia. Today, if I look at what I'm proud of what we're doing today to try to change the way people sleep, and at the same time lead the paradigm shift from bed to smart bed, and do something to help a lot of people sleep better. And you know, there are over 8 billion people, or maybe 8 billion people on the planet. Everybody sleeps. Sleep is a third of people's lives, and everybody focuses on, you know, spreadsheets, accounting, business processes, robots and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, humans are the most important the asset that we have. And 8 hours of sleep, you know, sleep is a very mysterious ground. You're like, Billie Eilish's song goes, you know, when we sleep, where do we go? And it's a great mystery like the deep ocean. And that's I'm very passionate about that and proud of that. And of course, I'm proud of the camera phone, because today there are 7 billion camera phones in use. That's almost one per human, and this is the most successful consumer electronic or device ever in the history of humanity, more than anything else. And I think every time I see someone using the camera phone to record an event or take selfies and all that, I said, yeah, this is great. This is great. This is, so I'm proud of that. And I'm proud of course, of the work we did on programming tools with Turbo Pascal, Turbo C++, Prolog, etc. At Borland. Of course, I'm very proud of that. But, it's, I guess I love them all. They're all like my kids.
I bet, yeah, that's right. Could you share with us a little bit about the inspiration to create the camera phone? And did you imagine we would have 7 billion of them at any one point, and the impact it would have on society?
Oh, when I started, there was about 8 months before my daughter was born. I was trying to build a server. I was in between two companies, basically prior companies that they acquired. I was trying to build a server to instantly share pictures from a camera. And like everything else, we all know in technology, if it wasn't for the last moment, nothing would get done. And when my wife and partner in business, Sonia, went into labor, I was almost done. And as we were driving to the maternity, it's a nice maternity with a big room with a desk and all that, not a hospital, here in Santa Cruz. And I took all my gear with me, and with the encouragement of my wife, Sonia, and we while she was in labor, I just got to finish everything and take that first picture. Had I envisioned that it would be that way? No, that was a bit of serendipity, but it was the perfect picture. That moment, the camera phone, but more importantly, Sophie, my daughter, was born. And that was great. And there's a bit of magic there. And sometimes, that happens.
Oh, what a special picture to have, to be the first taken on the camera phone, to be that one. That's very special.
It's very special. And Time Magazine picked it as one of the most important pictures in the history of humankind. So that's very exciting, and it's a beautiful picture, because when people pick pictures, this is a very interesting thing. When people take pictures and pick, what are the most important pictures? It's usually tragic pictures. It's wars. It's pictures of the Holocaust, or all sorts of things, right? It's always tragic. Oh, that was, and this is a very positive picture that everybody can relate to. It's a newborn baby, couple of hours or an hour old, that could be anybody's baby.
Absolutely, it's a beautiful thing, a picture of life. It's a beautiful thing, a beautiful picture for sure.
Exactly.
Yeah. Staying on technology a bit, shifting a little bit towards AI, which is a big, huge topic in our community, as I suppose with any community interested in technology these days. What do you think will be the next transformative technology after AI?
Well, first, we're not done with AI. There's work to be done. I think there's really two important vectors. I mean, one we're part of, so it's going to sound self-serving, but one is, of course, quantum computing. I think that may be important because of the important. There's a lot of reasons why it's important, including quantum entanglement, et cetera, et cetera. And then there is basically AI applied to biomedicine. The ability to have precision medicine, and it's part of AI, but a lot of the AI today is very theoretical, and some of it is about a better search engine and research papers and all that. But I think that the most important part is what we can actually practically do with AI when it relates to the world through sensing, through cognizance of the environment, etc. That is something that a lot of people don't deal with, and that's if you want, that's part of what we do at Full Power, and all that work that happens at the edge with the environment, and of course the looking for new molecules, be able to accelerate clinical trials, all the kind of things that we can do. I think that's very transformative, as much as probably quantum computing, which is very important, obviously.
Yeah, quantum computing is slowly starting to find its way into the discussions of our community and seems very exciting. I have to be honest, I don't know much about it, but definitely time to start looking into it because it's starting to be mentioned more and more and more. Still on AI, this is an interesting one. This is something that was already asked in our previous event where we had an AI panel. Your opinion on how should secondary schools, and I suppose schools in general, deal with the challenges of AI? How can we encourage research and creativity among our youth when AI seems to have all the answers, apparently, anyway?
I'm going to be provocative here. I'm going to say that AI has no answers.
Wow, okay.
Critical thinking, learning the basics, learning math, geometry, physics without AI, learning to program simply without AI would be very formative for kids. I give you an example. You could call any good chess playing program a form of AI. They've been around for a long time, but they're very intelligent. They can beat any player out there, and they use algorithms we all know about, etc. How does it help people to play chess to cheat and use one of those programs? It doesn't. They don't get better. You can use them as a tutor and a coach, but initially you have to know how to play chess without any other help. And it's the same thing. The concept of critical thinking, especially in technology, is really important. We want to be able to run AI, not be run by AI. AI should be an extension of what people do, but it shouldn't be a necessity, especially early in the education of kids. That is my opinion. I think it's controversial. People think that AI will be teachers everywhere and all that. I get to tell you something. During the pandemic, a lot of kids have been stuck in front of screens because schools and universities didn't work. All these kids went backwards in their social skills and a lot of their abilities because, they were like it's in bed at the dormitory watching something with a fake background and they passed their tests and they passed everything but they're very handicapped. Do we want all of our children to follow a pattern that's similar to that, to just keep on interacting with the machine, which is AI, right? And not get the basics. Once you have the basic, it's very easy to control and to understand how to use AI. But if you take an accountant, I don't need to learn how to make a spreadsheet anymore about the budget. I can tell the AI, make a spreadsheet about the budget. How will you know that it's quality? How will you be creative? How will you, add that extra touch? I mean, it's very important, in my opinion.
Absolutely. I think that would be a good generational discussion for our community there. So how do you see ideally this interaction between people, humans, students, whatever it may be, workers, and AI working ideally in the future? How in your vision should that happen?
My opinion is that AI should be a tool, an extension of what we do, not drive what we do. And I understand that a lot of people want that to be. I'll give you an example. And I think about it this way. And this is a kind of a sociocultural or almost socioeconomic thing. For most people, not the people who come study at the ETH, but for most people who work in high school and the gymnasium, right? For most people, they get a job. Well, most people are going to get a job working maybe at McDonald's or packing products at an Amazon warehouse or something like that. If you automate all that, like you are automating, you want to automate taxis with automatic taxis and all that, where are all these entry jobs going to be? And are we actually, is that called progress for the humanity? Or is that actually not serving any other purposes than maximizing maybe returns for a small group of people? And I don't understand the societal consequences. I know we can be all excited and it's automation and it's so great and it's no different than the Industrial Revolution. But we got to think about that because right now, a lot of AI projects are basically made to replace entry-level jobs. And I think that we have to think as a society, is that what we want AI to do, where we want to put our energy, or do we want AI to help us do precision medicine, to do research, to discover opportunities in the ocean, and really something that's new and not just replacing entry-level jobs? That's my biggest concern about a lot of the focus that people have. If Amazon spends $5 billion in developing robots to replace everybody who works in their warehouse, they maybe become more efficient and they don't have to deal with humans and medical insurance for humans and all the stuff that you have to do when you run a business. That may be so. But what does it do to the 400,000 people they employ today? Do you just let them go? And what are they going to do? And so what kind of society is this going to drive? And I think that, to me, that's an important part of AI and our responsibility as people who are involved with actually AI to actually bring this up and say, because we always talk about safety of AI, which is important. Like, will AI take over, the old, I can't do that, Dave, like in 2001, everybody's concerned about that. But to me, there's a natural concern, which is the societal concern that I'm talking about here.
Sure. In the end, people need jobs, and the economy and society needs employed people to function, right? We cannot just function on robots with unemployed people everywhere.
It's tragic when people can't have a job. And even if you decide, oh, well, everybody will have an automatic salary and all that, that doesn't work. I mean, the kind of society that develops is that the lack of pride and ownership and satisfaction. And these entry-level jobs, they're always a springboard for a lot of people. You find a lot of people, even on Amazon, that start in the warehouse and now they're in management because they have training courses, et cetera, et cetera. And all well-managed companies do that. They have those processes and all that, and the ability to have progress in their career. Without the entry-level jobs, all that system goes away because the only people who are going to get jobs is people who are pre-qualified because they were able to go to a university or something like that. We can't do that for everybody on the planet.
Right, absolutely. Thank you for that. What about in the context of the arts? I know you're a classical musician, classically trained musician yourself. How do you feel about AI, in the impact of AI in the creative process, especially in the arts? Like so much music, so many paintings are now generated by AI. How do you feel about that?
Well, it's a real difficult question because good art is a reflection of human emotion. You can train AI to fake human emotion. Obviously, you can fake everything, every style to AI, whether it's music or art, and you can do that. That's at the top of the pyramid. You know, the fake. You know, something. Is it as good as Picasso, or is that piece of music as good as Debussy or something like that? Or is that jazz solo as good as John Coltrane? That's at the top, and obviously that's a concern. But the other one is very similar to this. What we were talking about is that musicians also want work. I mean, if you have studio musicians, if you have people who compose music for movies and all that, and if now people say, well, we don't need those guys, we're just going to replace it by AI and all that, then at the end of the day, there's going to be a drying out of the talent, of the opportunities and everything else. And I think that'll be tragic, because human art will be bound to pressing a button and writing a prompt and up, I got a song. And now, you know, to me, that's tragic. That I believe in imperfect pieces of art because they're human. I don't, and of course, AI could fake that, but AI could fake anything. But I think we need to be smart about that. And you know, these days you get those emails from people, you can tell they've been written by AI, because you know, 2 years ago there were spelling mistake, grammatic, and they were short and pretty much to the point. Maybe not the best thing. And now you could tell, oh, okay, ChatGPT or Perplexity or someone like that wrote that. And it's like, okay, so who is this person? Am I talking to ChatGPT or Perplexity or Anthropic, whatever, or am I turning it to this other person? And that's, I think that's the same thing.
Got it. Understood. I want to take us a little bit towards companies and starting a company. We have a lot of questions on startups and how to develop them, how to manage them. And as you know, ETH has several spin-off companies as well. So there's big interest from the community in that. To start sort of like a general question, what's the most valuable lesson you've learned about building and scaling a company?
I have several. The first one is things will never turn the way you envisioned them on day one. That's the first thing. You have to be prepared for change. The second one, read The Evolution of the Species from Charles Darwin. It's the best business book and entrepreneurial book you will ever read. And what you have to remember is one thing he said, essentially, in a nutshell, is the species that survive are not the strongest, are not the smartest, but they are the ones that are most responsive to change. And what it means is adapt, 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 adapt. It's the building a startup is an evolutionary process. The next thing that I would say is passion. You have to have passion to it, and you have to have endless passion and never give up. Every time, you know, building a startup is a series of link recoveries, and you have to do that. And it's tough to be to be an entrepreneur, start a startup. You're going to sacrifice a lot of things. You may sacrifice, if you have children, the soccer games, the football games. You may sacrifice the prize givings and all of that. But at the end, there's a reward. But you're going to sacrifice part of your life. There is absolutely no way to be a successful entrepreneur unless, you know, I'm sure there's exceptions. But most people sacrifice a lot. And those are my lessons. All this said, it's a great life. It's a great adventure. And it's 100 times worth it.
Fantastic. I have one that's nicely formulated here. I like the way this person asked this question. What is more challenging, mastering and performing a classical piece of music on the flute, or getting a team of people to align towards the same goal in a company?
Oh, for heaven's sake, it's getting the people to all align. And the reason is, getting people, managing people as a psychological, quality people and professionals that really know their stuff. It's really there's a lot of psychology. It's complicated. Mastering a piece on the flute, it's just a matter of spending many hours and practicing and committing to it, and you're the only one responsible because it's there. Basically, getting a team to work together is like being an orchestra director. You have to make sure that nobody puts a full note and everybody plays together. Everybody is on the same pulse, the same rhythm, and everybody's playing the same music. It's a team effort. It's more akin to being the manager of a football team. We've seen that, by the way, with football teams like Paris Saint-Germain. They could have Messi, Neymar, Mbappe, and they can't win anything.
Right.
And then you have small teams that do way better. Actually, your Swiss team did way better than Paris Saint-Germain. And so it's really the same. It's the same. It's much more similar. Now, in terms of difficulty, I think it's a very difficult exercise. However, mastering a difficult piece of flute is very challenging personally, but it's a lot of work and it's a beautiful thing.
Absolutely, yes, it is. So when you're getting people to move towards the same goal, align towards the same goal, I suppose the beginnings of that is building a strong team and aligned team. How do you identify those people? How do you identify people who will adapt to that team, who will fit into a team and drive towards the goal? How do you identify that talent?
That is really, I tell you, that is a big challenge to find people. And I'll tell you why. Because TikTok is full of advice on how to interview, how to pass on these things, how to fake things, how to sound good, how to sound interesting. There are zillions of ways to look at this stuff and play with it. And people, they're all trained. Even if you look at things, what I like, and it's not universal, but I like to ask people, do they play team sports, or have they played in lycée, in the gymnasium, and the high school team sport? And I think that when people are passionate with team sports, they understand, because working in a startup, it's a team sport. It's really a team sport. You got to score goals. You got to win. But in order to win, you have to play like a team. You can't play like a single player who thinks he's going to get all the glory and all that. The best teams work like that. And so that's, I found, really an important part of my interview process and selection process. Now, we found some people who are brilliant and never played a team sport, and they're fine, and they have social skills. But social skills are very important. It's very difficult to train people that don't have those social skills. And that's hard to assess in an interview. You can. We spend quite a bit of time ourselves, for an interview process. People talk to 5 or 6 people in our team, and we get together. Then we try to talk about it. Then we bring the people back, and we have to be absolutely sure that people are team players. We really do not hire people who are not team players.
Got it. Understood. I have a question here about failure. So can you share an instance, but maybe you don't have to share the specific project, but if you had a specific project that failed, what did you learn from that failure?
So my biggest failure was when we built the camera phone. We had that vision in 1997. And I went right away to the management of Motorola, the leading company at the time for cell phones. They were the leader beyond Nokia at the time and all that. I went to Kodak, the leading camera and film company. They were huge. They were the big, successful companies at the time. And I went to Polaroid, was also huge. I work with the people, the CEOs and all. I spent time at all these headquarters to no available. The Motorola said, we're only interested in voice, better voicemail, better thing. Nobody's going to want a camera on a phone and take a picture and share a picture. Why would anyone want to do that? At Kodak, they said, well, our bread and butter is silver halide film. It's a chemical process, and we have these 1 hour photo places in every mall and everywhere around town, and that's how we make money. With digital, we're never going to make money. And I tell them, well, what you could do is license your brand and develop digital technology that you could license to the camera maker. Yeah, no one's ever going to take digital pictures. They're not as good as silver halide. Said, that's going to change. We have the first Casio digital camera was starting to be successful. It wasn't, very good quality, but it was already pretty good. And so they weren't interested. And I went to Polaroid and I said, hey, this is the Polaroid of the 21st century. We're not into 21st century yet, but we soon will be. And this is the Polaroid of 20th. It's going to digital Polaroid, instantly share a picture. And they say, oh, no, we make money by selling all these films and these cameras. And the films, we sell one camera and people keep on buying the film. This is a gold mine for us. Those companies were very large companies, the most successful companies at the time. Today, they're pretty much bankrupt.
Yep.
Certainly Kodak and Polaroid are a shadow of themselves. Motorola still has a business, but they basically sell walkie-talkies to the U.S. police force. I mean, that's a big business, and the military, but they're out of the phone business, and they're shadow of anybody else. I mean, look at Apple and all that. Apple's biggest product is the iPhone. That's a camera phone, and they make, that's worth $3+ trillion in market cap. It's crazy. So that was my biggest failure. And then we kind of we're going, are we wrong about this? We filed patents and all that. Are we wrong about this? And then we thought, nobody in America was to listen to this. We tried with cell phone carriers, Verizon and AT&T. Nobody was interested. So we said, I've done business in Japan yet. I'm going to go to Japan. And I talked to my contacts in Japan, and they introduced me to a small carrier in Japan. And that's almost 1 year later. It was 1998 by the time that happened. And they got, oh, wow, this is interesting. And they had the idea of kids using this to share pictures and all that. And they put together a deal with Sharp, who made the phone. And from that failure, we had the first camera phone successful. Now, was that the big success? Not quite yet. But what was interesting is that it became successful in Japan, this little carrier starting to be successful. And then, we still were concerned that, do we have a success or failure here? And so we were lucky that a good writer at Wired magazine was very important in the US at the time, may not be as important today, but still an important publication. And he wrote us up a big article describing everything, published early 2000, if I remember, and describing what we thought we could do for medicine, for multimedia, for social networking, and all that. He describes it all and all. And then we used that to go to multiple US carriers again. We didn't find anybody. And again, there was a smaller carrier in the US called Sprint. And we we went to Sprint, and someone there got excited and saw the article. He actually had called us after reading that article and went to Japan and see what they were doing and says, I want to do that at Sprint in the US. And we launched in 2002, which is 5 years in America. It's actually 5 years after the creation of the camera phone, and basically a little over 2 years after the launch in Japan and America, and that became a huge success. But so that was initially a failure. I mean, it was a technical success, but it was very difficult to get any traction. So that's my example of failure that you try to turn into success. But that's also part of what we talked about, which is adapt. I mean, that, things are never going to turn out the way you thought they would.
Absolutely, especially in that case where so clearly the technology was ahead of its time that people could not yet see the value, I suppose. And,
it was amazing to see those executives. It was like, okay, can't you see this? No, we can't. And those were Kodak, Motorola, and Polaroid. I mean, people should see it. Certainly Kodak and Polaroid, because they were film and camera photo people, and Polaroid instant picture. And the only way to share them is to give you a Polaroid and then take another one, because you can't even make a copy. And so they couldn't envision the fact that this is going to be huge. And of course, that became the core architecture of modern multimedia, like Instagram and TikTok and all that.
Absolutely. Let me ask you a question related to those CEO, C-level people not taking the risk to do something different. And how about you, when you were making a decision? So, can you describe your decision-making process when you're faced with high-stake choices and choices that involve some degree of risk? How do you make those decisions? What are the steps you go through?
How do we make decisions? I think with any high-stake decision, there are two things. There's the rational part, and then there's the gut and the instinct. And you can't just listen to one, especially when there's not a clear path. You got to allow for doubt, and you allow for advice from advisors. I mean, I think that's very important to have advisors and people on your team, but it may be people from outside the company. We all have some people we trust and we can run things by. I mean, I'm very lucky that my partner and my wife is my business partner, and she's got a very rational way of looking at things, and she's very helpful in helping weigh decisions. And then there's the gut. I mean, your gut, your instinct, that's important. You can't take that away. You can, you can't just do it. And then you can flip a coin, but I'm not a big fan of that.
Right. Well, I have a last question for you now, which I'm going to blend two of them together. So what would be your advice to young entrepreneurs, people who are about to leave university and start their own businesses, especially if they are in a very populated field such as AI is these days, where a lot of people want to be? What advice would you have for those people?
My advice is focus on something you're passionate about. Passion is key, and focus on something that solves a problem. It's just as simple as that. In my career, that's what I did. When we started with Turbo Pascal and Turbo C, C++, we tried to build better programming tools. The programming tools of the time were terrible, and we solved the problem, and that became successful. With a camera phone, that solves the problem, and that became obviously a huge success. With the idea of sharing pictures instantly over public network, and with my company Full Power, AI, we're focused on AI-powered biosensing and specifically sleep. And we think that's a huge opportunity. And we've been very successful with it. We've partnered, we've licensed our technology, and the company is doing great. And so that is my advice: is focus on a bottleneck, a problem you can solve. But you can't just build a business. It has to make sense. You know, if you only have a hammer, you make everything else look like a nail. And find a screw and use a screwdriver. But don't say, "Oh, okay, I'm gonna hammer everything with that hammer." It just doesn't work. It's very important to say, well, why am I doing this? Why am I building this business? And how is that going to be successful? What are the benefits to the customers? Or who are the customers? There's a bunch of things you have to do. Everybody knows that, right? Who is the customer? What's the size of the market? What's the addressable market? All the kind of things that everybody does. But it really has to be logical. It can't just be, oh, I have really great technology. Let's make a business out of it. That's not good enough. What are the benefits of it? How can we turn this into something practical? And that's a little bit the difference between academia and entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship is building practical engineering solutions that solve problems, perhaps from theoretical technology, but the theoretical technology is not good enough. And so what we need to do is always look at the benefits of what we're doing and always focus on the benefits to the market, to people, to the customers, to the partners. And I find so many people who say, I've got this great piece of technology. Look, it's really cool. It's better than anybody else. And you turn out, that's great. It's very impressive. But how are you going to turn that into a business? And so you may then, your best idea then is maybe to license that technology to a larger company who knows how to do that. And that you become not a solution, but a component of a solution. Or you have something special and it's very clear that it is special.
Thank you very much, Philippe. I think this is a good place for us to end our AMA today. Thank you so much for your time and availability, for sharing your experiences, your knowledge, your advice with our community. It's very, very much appreciated by your fellow ETH alumni who will be on the other side watching this. Thank you so much.
Well, good. And thank you for having me.